at the end of what is space. What about black holes storing up data on the outside of its shells or shell, and that we are all just projections of the 2D data stored in the black holes. And space time is usually understood to describe space existing in three dimensions with display of the role of a
We are
fourth
live.
dimension. All right? And all four come together to form a continuum or a state in which the four elements can't be distinguished. Now, we understand there was a group back in 1969. We spoken about this before, and the name of the group is the Fifth Dimensions. It was Marilyn McCool and her crew, in which they had the song "The Age of Aquarius," in which that they were singing about how this new age has come in. So, the indigenous people around the world have stated that, like for example, if you go to India, they have what is called the Kali Yuga age. Well, Master Sunyata Saraswati, Grand Master, 10th degree, Dan Black Sash, who was my teacher, told me that the Kali Yuga age was ending and the Sata Yuga age is beginning. Now, the Olmecs, which is the actual writers of the Mayan calendar, as they refer to it as, actually, as we know, is the Olmecian calendar, stated that December 21st, 2012, was the beginning of this new age. The indigenous people around the world, whether it's in Australia amongst the Aborigines, Africans, or Native Americans, here they all state within their culture that we are moving from the third dimension into the fifth dimension, or the fifth world, as they refer to it as. The Bible, in the book of Revelation, states there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. So all of these things coincide, and all the ancient people speaks about this, and this time is now. So what we understand is that as we move into the fifth dimension now, let me explain this, because people don't understand what these various dimensions are. All right? We would say, like, for example, the third dimension, of course, is length, width, and height. All right? The fourth dimension is actually time and space. And the fifth dimension is light or energy. The sixth dimension is gravity. Now, the first and second dimension, first dimension would be a blank slate, as we would say, in which that nothing per se is written upon yet. However, the second dimension would be what you place upon that blank slate, in which that you get a two-dimensional, just like if you get a pen or paper or a pencil and paper, and you write the pencil upon the paper, you have just created a two-dimensional apparent reality. When I go and get the material in order to copy what I see upon that paper, then I make it into a three-dimensional reality, apparent reality. So this is how the dimensions are built upon each other. Okay? So we understand that the scriptures also speak about the fact of this kingdom of God. And we know that within Luke 17:21, it speaks that the kingdom of God is within you.
Ooh.
All right, so we know that the kingdom of God actually is the state of mind, which is the Christ mind. All right, Christ being Keres from ancient Kemetic or ancient Sumerian philosophy, in which that Keres means the mummified body of Osiris, which actually is the soul embedded inside of the pineal gland that must be awakened. And it is his bride in which that awakens the bridegroom. So our soul is awakened by Auset as he travels through the seven caves, all right, which is the seven chakras, to awaken him in the seventh layer, which is actually the third ventricle. And it is there, that he is awakened to become Heru. All right. So the sleeping soul is Osar, Lord of the underworld, the subconscious plane. But upon awakening, that conscious power comes to consciousness and becomes Heru, which is the living Christ. All right. This is what this is really all talking about. So it is but the universal mind personified.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A state of knowing that God is the I am within us. Therefore, the kingdom of God is actually synonymous with God consciousness. All right. So know that the mind is unseen in and out the temple. All right. In other words, the physical body is the temple. All right. And you can have out of body experiences or near death experiences, or either at the point of death, the cord is cut, which is called the ethereal cord, and the soul travels on without the temple. All right. We understand that if you go to Romans 14:17, it says the kingdom of God is not meat and drink, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Ghost. So it's a state of mind. That's what we're talking about, which actually, like I said, is synonymous with God consciousness. All right. And I'm not here to, biblically, hit y'all, with everything, but we're trying to analyze, what we really mean here by the universal life power or universal life energy and the science of breath. So we got to establish this universal energy and what it is and how it's projected into this realm of this so-called matrix. So that's why we were dealing with that information in the beginning, showing you how quantum physics correlate to Taoism, correlates to Buddhism, correlates to Hinduism, correlates to Christianity, correlates to Islam, correlates to Judaism, because there's a common thread that runs through all of them, and that is talking about God is everywhere. So if you say God is everywhere, then describe God. What is you really talking about? What is the template in which that is used to understand God? So man can understand God. All right, or Elo, or Elah, or Allah. All right, whichever term you want to use. We understand that when you read that Luke 17:21, as I said, Jesus said, neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. So God resides within you, the Holy Spirit resides within you, Jesus Christ resides within you. And understand this is nothing more than Set, Saw, Heru, the Holy Trinity. All right, one and the same. And when they combine, which is mother, son, and child, or as they say, the Holy Spirit, Father, and Son, is all within the temple of God, which is the physical body. All right, you don't understand that? Go to 1 Corinthians 3:16. It says, do you not know that your temple of God, that you are the temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells within you? It's right there. You go further into 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, and it says, do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you? And it says, therefore, glorify God in your body. So you glorify God in your body. 2 Corinthians 13:5, it says, or do you not know yourself that Jesus Christ is in you? So the Spirit of God, which is the Holy Spirit, God, and Jesus Christ, all is within you. The scriptures say it out plainly within Corinthians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. So they have made these things exoteric, made it as if it's something outside of you, and you have to go in search of outside of you, always in constant search, you never find it.
Right.
The key is to understand that in order to draw forth this energy, this universal life force energy, is through actually the science of breath, which, if you go to Genesis, it says God breathed into the nostrils of man and made man a living soul. All right, so what did he breathe into the nostrils? Breathed of himself into the nostrils. That God consciousness once again. All right, so, as we continue on, we have to understand that, to the fullest. Brother L, you got anything to speak on before I go?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I was thinking about the melanin that most of us should have inside of us, but it amazes me how a lot of our people, especially during the summer months, how they seek for shade so much instead of absorbing the solar energy that they should be absorbing. You know, they go, "Ooh, it's so hot! It's so hot!" And I'm getting under the shade, and I watch them. And I say, "That's just sometimes it's just myself that's absorbing the solar energy." That's because I have knowledge of what the sun and what we are supposed to be about as relating to the sun, and most of them don't. For one, I think it's due maybe to a lot of their eating habits, their lifestyle that they live, and that causes a lot of that, you know. So, and also the breathing techniques, like you just spoke a couple of seconds ago about the breathing techniques. A lot of us don't really know how to breathe correctly, you know, and that causes a lot of bad thoughts, which is causing diseases, you know, among the people, sicknesses, and so forth.
Right. Well, we know that the first force is called the universal or the original force, which within Taoism is called Wu Chi. Yeah. All right. And is also known as the heavenly energy. In the Vedic teachings, it's called Saraswati, meaning nothingness or the essence of the self. In the Hindu mythology, she is the divine wife of Brahma, the creator of the universe. So she's the creatress. Saraswati symbolizes the creative power of Brahma. Now, biblically, that's Abraham and Sarah, whose names was Abram and Sarai. All right? So these same names is within Hinduism. In Buddhism, it is called the state of nirvana. So we understand that it manifests as the energy of all the stars, planets, and galaxies. Right? That's what this original or universal energy is.
Mm-hmm.
And we already broke down how it's projected through this matrix, but its original intent of this visible spectrum, if you go and do your research, is black energy or what's called dark matter. So this black energy makes up about 70%, all right, of what we cannot see, this hidden force or power or substance.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then the other 25% is made up of dark matter. And then the other 5% or so is made up of what we call the visible spectrum. That's everything that we can see: planets, moons, stars, asteroids, comets, etc. Suns, which is stars. All right. And there are different various stages of stars. Supernovas, you know, whether it's blue, yellow, white, red stars, etc. All right, yellow stars. All these stars exist, so everything exists within the visible spectrum, and that's only about 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some say go as high as 10%. All right, but we know that at least 65 to 70% is black energy or black light.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know about 20 to 25% is dark matter. So combined, that is 90 to 95% of what we cannot see. That correlates to the 90% of unused DNA.
Mm-hmm.
That goes into also the 90% of unused brain potential.
Yep.
So that means in order to bridge the gap between what you cannot see, you must raise the light through those 7 chakras in order to activate the God consciousness, because God dwells within the treasures of darkness. If you go to the book of Isaiah, that's what it says, that God dwells within the darkness, and he would give man the treasures of darkness. Okay, so it's talking about that the real God, all right, dwells within that black light, that dark matter. And of course, we understand is that the physical representation of that is the melanin. Melanin is the physical representation of the black light or black energy and the dark matter. Okay, so we understand that we understand that within that realm of 5% of what we can see, which is the manifested energy of all the stars, planets, and galaxies, that there's a vast energy which is all-pervading force that nurtures the mind, the soul, the body, and the spirit of each individual. Everything else in the universe that is manifest. So the word prana itself comes from the Sanskrit, which word pra means first, and na means the smallest unit of energy. All right, this is like what we would call atoms or quarks, which is atomic and subatomic particles. All right, which correlates to the sun dust particles that we're talking about that falls to the planet Earth daily. So prana is the life force that is responsible for forming and regulating energy into the form of matter. Okay, that's what we have to understand. So, a doctor by the name of Frank Barr, he stated that the more complex an individual is and their capacity to absorb light is what evolutes them to the next level of species. In other words, you just don't stay Homo sapiens sapiens. In other words, you've been taught in school that there was a Homo erectus, and the Homo erectus became the Homo sapien. Then the Homo sapien became the Homo sapien sapien. Well, that means that the Homo sapien sapien must become something else. Well, come to find out that all the ancients speak about this jump in evolution from a 2-strand DNA to a 12 strands DNA, physical, and then 12 strands etheric DNA. So that means that we would jump from a Homo sapiens sapien to become a Homo Christos, which means the same as Christ, meaning the true term of the word Christian, which means what? To be Christ-like, which means that you develop those gifts, in which that is mentioned within 1 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, where it speaks about the gift of healing, the gift of miracles, the gift of prophecy, the gift of knowledge, the gift of wisdom, the gift of faith, the gift of discerning the spirits, the gift of speaking in tongues, the gift of interpreting in tongues. Those are the 9 gifts of Christ, or the 9 fruits of Christ. And you will gain all of those abilities. So now we understand the reason why you have to pollute the air with chemtrails, pollute the water with fluoride, which calcify the pineal gland. The chemtrails can give a person a skin disease, in which that is called Morgellon, in which that is like a flesh bacteria eating bacteria, a flesh-eating bacteria. All right, so that you can't use your melanin to the highest quantities and quality.
Right.
And
that's
now,
dealing
of course,
with that's dealing also with the medication a lot of our people are taking. That doctors administer to them. I thought so.
As well as also the foods in which that has genetically modified organisms. And like you said before, if it's genetically altered or genetically modified, then of course they tell you exactly what's going to happen as you consume. Those are actually viruses, as they will really want to say, in which that can actually change your DNA. And you have what is called telomeres, which when you eat these foods, shorten your telomeres, which means that essentially that it shorten your lifespan. Because as you practice the various sciences such as Qigong or Tai Chi or Reiki or pranic energy, anything dealing with energy modality, what those sciences do is lengthen your telomeres, which means it gives you a longevity, it gives you health, it gives you rejuvenation and regeneration and revitalization, re-energizing your physical structure, which is the temple of God, as compared to the genetically modified foods compared to the fluoride and the chemtrails, which damages your temple of God. So we understand what they're trying to do. All right? But as it states within 1 John 4:4, greater is he within you than he that is in the world. All right? So if you understand the concept of how great we actually are, you will actually see that prana actually is a form of love. In other words, the more prana that you breathe, and what people don't realize is that if you read the book 777 by Alistair Crowley, or the writers of Alistair Crowley, he states in there that the word Jesus Christ breaks down to the geometry of the numeral 888.
Mm.
888, in which that is 8 protons, 8 neurons, and 8 electrons. Now, when you go to the periodical chart, you will find, if you go to the 8th element on the periodical chart, that's oxygen. No coincidence, that's oxygen. And oxygen breaks down to what? 8 protons, 8 neutrons, and 8 electrons. 888. So oxygen is Jesus. That's what people don't understand. But the ancient Egyptians understood that because they said that his name is Shu. And Shu means he who raises up. Shu is known as the personification of air. Shu is the god of air, which is the wind, and sunlight, which is fire, just like Jesus is. Jesus is called the light of the world. When Jesus came into the book of Acts, he blew upon his disciples, and they received the Holy Spirit. He blew. So he is the God of air. Now, when you check out air, 8% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, and 1% inert gas. And the lungs purifies the bloodstream. Okay? Now, what do nitrogen do? Nitrogen ignites. All right? When you have dynamite, the major component of dynamite is nitrogen. And when it's sparked, it ignites. It blows. It explodes. Well, when you take in oxygen, this nitrogen and inert gas sparks light into your cellular structure. Okay? So I'm talking about what quantum physicists are now beginning to understand what is taking place in the human body. So as you breathe in, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why we should be able really to heal ourselves. You know, like what you're saying, to be our own doctors and physicians. I was reading something here, if I may quote one little paragraph here from David Icke's book, and the truth shall set you free. And he says here, this is why we think of ourselves as ill and as healthy. Our emotions stimulate and release chemicals into our bodies, which have positive and negative physical effects. Laughter is a great healer because of the chemicals it releases, and hatred and anger and fear and guilt causes diseases for the same reason. And that's true. You know, the health is actually free, and we will be able to regenerate ourselves by our own thoughts. Ain't that something?
True. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so that's why when you study these energy modalities, you find out that energy follows thought. Within the Nation of Islam teachings and Nation Gods on Earth, we know that within the student enrollment lessons, or the 120, it speaks about the fact that thought travels 24 billion miles per second. Light only travels 6,000 miles per second. So light, which is energy, follows the thought because thought is stronger or is faster than light or energy. So you find out that prana is the universal life force energy, and it's the sum total of all the forces in nature. So the breath, which is air, oxygen, is the external manifestation of prana. Heat, light, electricity, magnetism are also manifestations of prana. But exercising control of your breath, you can control the subtle prana internally. All right? So control of prana means the control of the mind. Mm-hmm. The breath directed by the thoughts under the control of the will is a vitalizing, regenerating force which you can utilize consciously for self-development, for healing many incurable diseases in your system, for healing others, and for other various useful purposes, such as manifestation, thought manifestation. So, no doubt what you're saying is right on point. And what people got to realize is that prana is not the mind or the soul, but rather the force or energy through which that the soul manifests its activity, and the mind manifests its thought. All right. In the occult, it is called the astral light, and the word astral means star. So hence, starlight, star bright, first star seen tonight. All right. The little saying is told true, and that actually is prana. All right. So those who do not possess a healthy amount of melanin cannot experience, and make, or make manifest from the astral light as those who do. All right. So this is why they're trying to, as we awaken, they're trying to damage the melanin as much as possible through those particular means, through the calcification of the pineal gland, through the dis-ease of the skin, through, through the genetically altered food within the DNA, which acts as stoppers to the growth or the expansion of your DNA. This is why all these things are taking place.
Vaccinations and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And all these they got all these shots, for flu shots, pneumonia shots, and all these other kind of shots. Really, they're all designed and created to knock down our capacity to use our melanin to absorb a lot of these negative entities from the sun.
Exactly.
Another paragraph I was reading, also a small paragraph. It says, our bodies age and become infirm because that is the reality program into the human mind, and that is the reality we create. We don't have to age in the way that we do. Our thoughts ensure that we age, not our bodies. The power of thought to heal the body is somewhat the global elite. Our bodies are going through incredible changes, and this will increase with each year. So that's the end of that paragraph.
Exactly. Right. So basically, that's what we have to understand, Brother L, is that this material world, which is called within the Hebrew, all right, or Asia, is established in the astral world. So the prana is the string that runs the physical and the emotional, mental machinery of life. It's the substance of the human aura. The colors of the mental state are manifest in that substance. There's a book called The Human Aura, Astral Colors and Thought Forms, and it's written by Panjadasi. All right? People can get that book. And what we realize is that the mind cannot operate without the help of prana. Therefore, prana also is the sum total of all latent powers and forces which are hidden in man and woman, and which lies everywhere around us. So all the forces, all the powers, and prana springs from the fountain or a common source. Now, the name of it is Atman. All right, Atman is Atma, which is Atum, which is Atom Cadman, all right, which actually derived from the dark energy in turn from dark matter, as we were talking about earlier. Those are just the names that they have used in the ancient Sanskrit, Vedic Sanskrit, or Indo-Kushitic teachings, as well as also within the Hebrew, the Kabbalistic teachings. Right? If you get a book by Deepak Chopra, I think the name of the book is called Quantum Healing. He wrote of scientists who studied the behavior of monkeys on the coast of Japan, and a particular monkey had began dipping his sweet potato the salt water to wash it off because it was dirty before eating it. Soon, all the monkeys within the colony was dipping their potatoes into the salt water. The scientists thought that, at first the scientists thought that the monkey was just copying each other, but they soon discovered in other parts of the world that the monkeys have also began dipping their potatoes into the
Deepak Chakra. Who is Deepak? Big time. Deepak Chakra.
salt water too. So the monkeys was communicating through an unknown intelligence across time and space through some form of intelligent energy, which of course we call collective consciousness, which you can tap into through the breath, the spirit, gas, etc. All right, so we have that same ability. Matter of fact, when you come in contact with an advanced master or an adept, and they have worked on their auric field, a person can actually walk, within 3 feet or more of their auric field and actually become healed just by walking in their auric field, or become activated. Their kundalini can become activated just by a touch of that master, or just a look of that master, or even being blown to breath by that master onto them. Okay, so we receive chi in many ways.
Alim Bay
Right.
talks.
All right.
Alim Bay speaks.
Now, we know that there's what is called prenatal chi, which we receive from our mothers and fathers before birth. All right, there is postnatal chi that we receive mainly through food, water, or breath after we are born. All right, this life force energy is in every atom of space. All right, as a matter of fact, the atom itself is empty space, or what appears to be empty space. All right, in which that the atom itself is 99.9999% empty space.
Right.
So if it's empty, or what appears to be empty, which basically means that it's passive, how do you make that kinetic? You must spark something into it. There must be a spark into it. So this is how you develop, this energy. So it comes up. We know that chi comes up from the earth and into our bodies through our feet. It comes down from the heaven, enters through our crown at the top of the head. So this life force body is the flow of the Creator in us. It gives life to the physical body. Without it, we would die. So this life force body or etheric body is an exact replica of the physical body. Your etheric body is about 2 inches above the physical body right now, and it's a color electric blue. All right? And it flows along these invisible wires, as we say, or pathways called the meridians. Now, we know that in Chinese philosophy, You have 6 meridians on your right, 6 meridians on your left, and there's two central channels, or what appears to be two, actually is actually one, but they call the Du and the Ren, Du and Ren, Ren. You have what is called your conceptual or functional vessel or channel, and then you have your governing function, your governing channel or vessel. Your governing vessel runs up from the perineum to the top of the head down the face. That's the governing vessel or channel. Then from the face down, the middle of the body back to the perineum runs the conceptual or functional vessel. All right? Your tongue goes up to the roof of your mouth behind your teeth, and you pull up your anal muscles. By doing so, you create the loop or connecting piece between both of those channels to become one channel called the microcosmic orbit. And you channel energy from the navel down to the perineum as the man, up the back of the spine to the top of the head and back down the front of the body. For the woman, the energy is collected within the navel, up the centerpiece or the central point of the body, up to the top of the head on the inhale, and then on the exhale, down the back of the spine, back to the perineum, and you circulate the energy in that way. So the woman circulate the energy in the opposite direction as the man. Mantak Chia was attempting to suppress.
Say it again. Deepak chakra. Mm, Deepak chakra. The Indian. Deepak.
The energy of the woman by making her Kundalini or Shakti force go in the exact same manner as the man, instead of making it go backwards from us, which is, if you notice, what I'm talking about is actually the symbol of what is called the yin and the yang. And when they come together, produces that connection of a whole or complete circle. All right? So, that's what's really going on, and we have to understand that.
Yeah. It's dealing with the also with the DNA, how dealing with like the fourth dimension, and the way to get to the fourth dimension. You know, a lot of us they're so steep into the third dimensional with material, sex, you name it, and they just can't seem to let go of it. And as long as they have that kind of what you say, that kind of mentality, they never will get to the fourth or fifth dimension and beyond.
Right.
Because of the world that they hold on to so much so dear. They feel like they want to miss out on something, but they're not missing out on anything. Because it says here, rather the machines will be able to talk to them. People with satellite television are amazed to find that their individual decoder cards can be programmed for the TV headquarters, and that's true. Have you ever just found to talk to someone? But this deals kind of with mind control too. If you're found to talk to one or say someone, you may yell at them, and they're still watching that television. They're so glued to it, And I was explaining to my little young niece because they're under hypnosis, and she said, "What?" I said, "They're under hypnosis. The TV is hypnotizing them. They're being programmed, and this is part of it's part of the whole thing. Like even dealing with the chemtrails, the whole thing to destroy our mind, our ability to think for ourselves, to heal ourselves, to teach ourselves and our children and their children and their children's children. You know, all this is to prevent this from happening. But I'm with Deborah. What Dr. Deborah Blair said is like a ant trying to stop a tidal wave. You know, because the consciousness is out here so heavy and so deep. You know, it can't be stopped. You know.
I don't.
You still there?
Yeah, we here.
Yeah, I hear a click. Okay. I was reading earlier that our ability to heal ourselves through laughter, which is a good healer because it releases a lot of positive energies and positive energies to others, you know, and to heal others, you know, and that this is what the medical profession among their elite
Yeah, spell it again.
About him, but I'll give you a brief bio of him. He's the director of the Meta Center that's been chartered in 1973. He's also a college professor, engineer, research scientist in the fields of magnetics, monotonics, history. He's lectured in over 200 places, so we're really privileged to have him here tonight in Tubman City. Some of his topics have included UFOs, cell phones, EFI waves, terrestrial aliens, inner earth beings, and is also #1 on the government hit list. So you know he knows some stuff anytime the government is behind. Well, without further ado, I'm not going to take up plenty of time because we're running short, but I would like to bring on Dr. Blair right now.
Thank you again, Brother Onk.
Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hi, folks. How are you? I'm glad that this huge throng of people came out, but at least you're there in numbers in the consciousness of, and I'm very happy and grateful that Reality Speaks, Charles Woods, and so have invited me to speak with you tonight, and that you took time out on a Saturday night, which is always things can be done on Saturday nights, to spend some time with me. I want to really go over two different sections, and because of the nature of what has happened here already during the earlier part of today, I'm going to skip some of that. But what I will do, if I skip over too much, and if there's some things, since it is a fairly small group, that we want to go over, I'll turn it over, given the time, maybe for a half an hour of Q&A or questions and answers, given their lives, but given their future, meaning by that, many of these men were very young when they passed, which means that they had a bright future ahead. But because of principles and the ability to state what needed to be stated, and tonight that things that are being conformist would be easier way to get out, but that's not the way to go anymore. We're in a time on this planet, as far as I'm concerned, it is a very much of a turning point. This planet has gone through a lot of changes over the millions of years in which intelligent life has been upon it, and I know that might come as a shock to some of you, but it's the only conclusion that I have reached. They have found a natural, to quote, unquote, the anthropologists and historians who are doing the digs, a natural nuclear reactor in West Gabon, Africa, that they carbon date at least 500,000 years old. It could have been 500 million years old. It wouldn't have mattered because it was something that should not be. It's one of those artifacts that are there that stare you in the face and you have no explanation for it. when they said natural, I began to automatically pique my interest. I said, okay, let me go out and find out when they say a natural nuclear reactor. Well, what is happening now, and this is current, and you might remember this, in Gabon, Africa, West Gabon, there's a 5-mile area which is releasing magnetic energy. I'll repeat that. In Gabon, West Africa, as we speak, there is a 5-mile area that is releasing magnetic energy. That simply means that magnetism is coming up out of the ground. It's going up into what they call the atmosphere. And there's supposedly 7 layers of atmospheres. What their names are is not that important, but it means it's going way up. What is happening is that magnetism is beginning to interfere with the nations of Earth satellites. The nations of Earth satellites, prediction, you heard it being said now, will begin to fall out of the sky. Some will begin to get short-circuited and begin to transpond things that they're not supposed to and do things that they're not supposed to. And these are very dangerous times, if no more than for that. Remember, you heard it here now. If you remember, day before yesterday, United States Navy supposedly shot down a huge satellite as big as a bus because it contained formaldehyde and other poisonous nutrition things that would be very bad, and almost went into another world war. I don't know if you realize that or not. Because when they shot this thing off, it had a scattered rocket load. In other words, it went off, then it scattered particles, which means if the impact missed it, these particles would then knock it out. Supposedly it was successful. The Russians went on red alert. The Chinese went on red alert. The French went on red alert, even though supposedly they were told this was going to be done. Because it was supposed to crash, and if it crashed, it might have been over a city, it might have been anywhere. So to stop that, they knocked it down. What they didn't tell you was why it stopped. I just gave you, to start our whole presentation tonight, one of the reasons it may have stopped. And you're going to hear more and more of that happening as our Earth is beginning to fight back on all these electrical towers that are everywhere. Now, I would love to get right into that, but I did promise that I wanted to go over a few things about black history, but this is present history that will be black history in the future. When you understand later on when that satellite went down, they won't tell you it's because of energy coming out of Africa that is coming up now into space and beginning to disturb everything that's running on electricity. Another statement I want to make, electricity is slowed down magnetism. Above electricity and magnetism is what is called orgone energy. Now, those are bad words. You don't want to say orgone out here to this government and research scientists, because orgone means original. It's organic. It's orgasm. It's organic. It's organic people. And, of course, they refer to those kind of people as original people. And what the last thing they want you to understand is who the original people are, and why the original people are, and where the original people are, and when the original people came. None of that will they teach you. But you do hear a word that's used a lot. It's called aboriginal. Never use that word aboriginal if you are indigenous to the planet. Why? Because it means to abhor the original person. Aboriginal means to abhor the original. To abhor means to hate, to envy, to covet, to dislike. Consequently, the word aboriginal means that you have a dislike for the original person. And the original person, of course, is a person with melanin. That's been proven so many times now that if necessary, I won't spend the time with an audience like you to go into that, but nevertheless. What is also very interesting is those who would say that the black man has contributed very little to the planet may be right, because there'd be no planet without the black man. So you don't go contribute to something that you had an original part of, and he owned at one time on our planet, and we can say almost no more than, about 50,000 years ago, you couldn't stay on the surface of this planet if you were not black. Because if you were not, and you were exposed to the radiation fields that were, it's just that simple. And whole races of people have died off anytime there's what they call a sun reversal. This is why it's been called sons of the sun. People who can live under direct sunlight, which lets off 12 rays from infrared to ultraviolet. And if you can take those rays and not have your inner organs interfered with, not have your brain cells interfered with, not have your reproduction cells interfered with, your immune system interfered with, and more than that, not being able to work through what they call the hypothalamus, a part of the brain that has two organs up there, two glands really, the pineal and the pituitary. We're taught in school, at least I was, maybe you had a misfortune that you didn't get miseducated as they made me, where I had to turn around and relearn everything that they taught me the wrong way in order to go the right way. The pituitary gland, they say, is your master gland. It controls all the functions in your body. I say nothing could be further from the truth. Your minor gland would be your pituitary gland. Your basic gland is your pineal gland. Some people call it pineal. I understand it's pine cone shape, called pineal gland. The pineal gland is the gland that produces melanin. And wherever you have melanin in your body, you're going to function differently than a person with little or none. And the grade of your melanin will help you to do things that other people can't. And when you're beginning to function with your melanin, then you can begin to adapt to magnetic fields. Here it's broken down. I'm giving it to you a different way now. Magnetic fields, electrical fields, and orgone fields. Without that, you cannot adapt to all three. You may adapt to one, the lowest of all, electrical fields. Our problem here nowadays is elves. And I'm not talking about the one in the hollow earth. I'm not talking about the one in the fairy tales, because elves, not elves, are killing you. Elves is extra low frequency, which is electrical propagations, electrical energy. That is what short circuits you. That's what's causing you to AIDS. That's what's causing your cells to AIDS. That is our biggest problem here. And they're building up more and more towers everywhere. And the more towers go up, the more it's going to short circuit anybody with an active pineal gland. And it's only going to be melanated people that can get through this. And even they now are being attacked with the shots and AIDS and all these other things, which we will also get into too. Setting the stage for some obviously broad coverage that we're going to do. There was an anatomy book and a physiology book, both that stated something along this line, to paraphrase it, that the pineal gland is an atrophied gland of very little usage and really not even necessary to discuss. That meant that the biggest, strongest, most powerful gland in an operating body that we're now in is of very little usage, and possibly, in many cases it is, because it calcifies. And it calcifies anytime you expose it to drugs. I didn't say to herbals. Anytime you expose it to allopathic pharmaceutical drugs, you're killing and causing a war with your pineal gland. When you use homeopathic and nutraceutical products, herbs, leaves, roots, things that are natural, things that contain sunlight, now it begins to amplify and work correctly. It is the gland that lets you tan, the gland that lets you blacken, the gland that gives you your psychic ability, the gland that produces serotonin by which you can get calm under situations, can sleep at night without taking other drugs. It is a master gland that when something goes wrong in your body, it chemically organizes it, analyzes it, and then sends a direction to the pituitary gland to start mass producing all these various hormones from the various things that we do. It does not like synthetic. I will repeat that once more. It does not like synthetic anything. Synthetic things are made in a laboratory to act like what would be a natural thing. If you are a natural person, you cannot use synthetic things without an aberration, a problem, something else happening within that system. And many things are happening within our systems now that are wrong, very bad. We have genetically modified foods everywhere. We have water that is full of fluorine, chlorine, and 38 different kind of things in most of the places. And in fact, if you're coming, unfortunately, again, from the Ohio area, it has more than the rest of it. And even in Chicago, where I come from, which supposedly has one of the best filtration plants around, they're still putting 38 different chemicals in to try to kill off bacteria. You have depleted uranium being given to soldiers, sailors, Marines, armed forces personnel over there fighting in the Iraq Middle East, which, by the way, is innocuous because the Middle East is where ancient Mesopotamia was, where Sumer was, and here you have the brethren who are supposed to be coming over there to start unlocking time locks, to come over there to get in tune with the planet, over there killing each other, blowing each other up, being bitten by crabs and the desert crabs and stuff, being given 34 shots before they can return, taking them out of the picture forever, messing with their reproductive organs, their brains, over there fighting a war that is not even existing because of a population who's trying to eliminate them, and they don't get the picture. What you understand is the irony of what's happening on this planet this time is almost insane. In fact, as the brothers say, Brother Ludicrous, it's not only insane, it's ludicrous. It's past belief on what is happening now to the young people's minds, the old people's minds, and the minds of those who are supposed to be awakening, trying to put it back into a deep coma. I want to go in with that one, but I do want to get back into this Black History portion because this is Black History Month, and I deal with Black history all year round, not just for this month. But I want to go over some highlights of something you usually don't see. Everybody right now is into Obama land. May I see your hand if you're now into Obama land? Don't think about it, just be honest. If you're into Obama now, lift your hand up, let me see it. Okay, that's about a third of the audience. You're into Obama land, either good or bad, because you want to see a black man become president of the United States. And you want to see what can be done under a free election system. Now, I don't know when that's ever going to occur here anymore. I guess there might have been a time it was. It's surely not now. Because as you will find out when the Ohio votes come in there again, Hillary will win, simply because they steal the votes out of Ohio. That's where the D-vote machine is manufactured. And whether the Republican Party person there stated that they would do anything to get Bush elected the last time, he was not elected in the first place, but selected. So anytime you do touchscreen black box voting, you control the votes, because whatever goes in, I can program a box to do that. And if I can do it, I know a head of people or a team of people can do it anyway. So again, you probably will still not get a honest selection because you didn't select these candidates. You're only going to vote for them if they allow you to. This is something that is very bad at this time, because if history repeats itself, we're in for a dire run coming up here in 2008. And with the coming election again in November, it's going to be quite a crisis time. Let me first of all say that when you see Obama, you're seeing Alexander Hamilton. Raise your hand if you remember anything at all about Alexander Hamilton. Let me just see your audience here if I can. Anything about Alexander? That's a few of you, not many. Alexander Hamilton was Secretary of the Treasury back in the 1700s, and Alexander Hamilton was a black man. Now, when you read the history books, he was Secretary of the Treasury, and if you see on your $10 bill, you see a caucanized, Caucasian-looking person with long, flowing hair, and so on and so forth. Actually, Alexander Hamilton looked much like Brother Obama to be his brother. And I have a picture which you can appreciate from here, and I didn't bring my slides. I didn't do that. I didn't know I had that privilege again. But you will see it. I'll try to make some copies before I leave town if possible. If not, you can write to our center. We can give it. This is a picture on your right of Obama, or I'm sorry, Alexander Hamilton. And a picture of Alexander Hamilton as they want you to think he looked. And if you look at him as he actually looked, you will see he looks so much like Obama, it's a shame. And Hamilton was killed in a duel with Aaron Burr. The real reason was because they didn't like him, because he was controlling the currency, trying to set the United States back on a gold standard, had a lot of influence in politics and was going nation over the seas, and many people were respecting him. Consequently, they offed him, supposedly with a duel over a woman. And this is the one of that one. The same thing could happen again in history if it goes away, because they look too much alike. Nobody's made that comparison, and it just opens up the box for many other comparisons too. We've already had 6 black presidents, 7 if you include John Hanson, who was president before George Washington. So when you're teaching in schools that the first president of the United States was George Washington, that's a big lie. He was president of the Continental Congress, and this is when the indigenous people here were teaching them how to run a country. And one of the most indigenous people they could find, of course, was John Hanson, who was re-elected twice, which means if you want to say he served 2 terms, you can almost say we had a president before George Washington that was black 2 times. There were 7 people elected during that particular time. All of that has been erased out of history, and therefore we start off with the first lie in misnomer that the first president of the United States of America was George Washington. It was not. Under the Constitutional Congress, it was John Hanson. But then we've also had others who were president of the United States, and their history is vast. I have a tape series that is called, I'm very proud of it. It took me 18 years to get it together. You can buy it off of the internet. I didn't bring some of them. I brought all of them. I brought some of them. It goes back at least 500,000 BC, and I have to entitle it Undocumented History, in which you will see that the history on this planet goes back much further than they're talking about. But even in so, when we're now looking at least talking about presidents again, we've had 7, if you're going to include John Hanson, 6 if you're not going to include him. One was Thomas Jefferson. He was part Indian. He really knew this and never denied it too much again. And of course, his wife really, without marrying her, was Sally Hemings. And if you read about the whole story of Sally Hemings and what happened there and how, again, they were lovers on the side, if you will, that takes care of it. It could go much deeper than I do on the tapes. Another was Warren Gamil Harding. And Warren Harding, of course, also had a wife on the side called Dora Wilburn. His mother was Elizabeth Harding. His mother was Elizabeth Madding until she married a Harding. She was already, again, a mulatto, if you want to call it. And his great-grandmother was Elizabeth Harding herself. So you had Elizabeth Madison and Elizabeth Harding. One of the books by J.E. Rogers, a person who was supposed to be unlettered, and I learned more from him than I did from most of the professors that chose to teach me black history. And this is a picture, although you can't see it from there. It shows, again, Warren Harding's father, and you can see he's a very definite black man. Warren Gamil Harding, of course, then was a black president. If you want to say Negro, I can't deal with that either because I don't know what a Negro is. So consequently, we just say he was a person of African ancestry or at least a person who had melanated blood, if you would. We also get into Calvin Coolidge. Nobody likes to talk with that one too much, but he was an indigenous. He was part Blackfoot and part Cherokee. And many say that he was part of the Menominee tribe. Well, the reason why they say Menominee, that's just a way of evading it, is because amongst the Menominee, you can get somebody looking as white, all the way down as black and black. The Menominee are mixed indigenous people. How they got that way is a long story. That's very metaphysical. But that's what you can find amongst the Menominee. You're really just saying, well, I don't know, so therefore we'll give him a title of that. And, of course, their names are not Indians because Columbus thought that he went to India. So even the people, and I've taught at some of the American Indian schools there for a while, it's another one of the things the Creator has had me to do, they don't even know what to call themselves. They still call themselves Indians. They were never called Indians. They were called by the tribe they were, or indigenous. And as I say again, never confuse indigenous with aboriginal. One is a curse, the other is a blessing. Don't make the curse into a blessing or a blessing into a curse. Separate the two. Calvin Coolidge, of course, started what was called the Nordic Society. And we've mistaken things now. Every time you say Nordic, you're thinking of people from Scandinavia, Ukraine, up to the Netherlands, and like that. That is not the truth. Nordic does not have anything to do with a race. It has to do with a territory. Territory, you will find people that look certain ways because most of our history books are history books, and ours is a mystery book. So consequently, if you were here earlier and understand the Mooney twins, so I know very well covered some of that, so I won't again because there's so much more I can talk about. But let's just say simply, the mystery of a history is where we have our problem. His story really started about 1909 at the University of Chicago, over there when John David Rockefeller financed an institution and started what was called the Oriental Institute, and it was a mandate because of the people that he was part of to change everything in history and have any published works, any professors that got degrees to have to go through that kind of a qualification period and start to teach a lie, which begins to be the truth. There are people I live in Chicago. I'm not too far from the University of Chicago campus. There are people who come from the Orient that are called Orientals that actually come there looking for skeletal remains or some kind of history for themselves, and they leave there puzzled because they go to the Oriental Institute and they can't find Orientals. Well, that's a collective way that they have now hidden what's supposed to be there, and supposedly they granted the first degrees in Egyptology from that place. And Egyptology, through Sir Flinders Petrie, was now said to be a study, as they told it, to find white history, which there was no trace of. The white history stopped at 312 BC with the invasion again of the so-called Greeks who could not read, could not write. And the reason why the term Greek for me was used was because nobody could understand what they were saying. They had sacked Persepolis, a place that had beautiful architecture, art, and everything else. Since they had no religion, no art, and no history, why would they then build supposedly the Alexandrian Library? Another lie. It was called the Library at On. Not only did they not build it, it was all they could do to maintain it, and it took them 3 generations in captivity, more or less, because even though they conquered the Egyptians, they couldn't do anything else, they couldn't learn, to finally get somebody intelligent enough to could begin to learn to read and write. Yet we talk about the ancient Greeks and how great they were. The Library at On, which is a teaching center there in lower Memphis, was where people from around the planet went to study. They had biology, they had history, they had zoology. They had a basic physics. Of course, at that time was metaphysics. They had astrology. Astronomy is very new. Tries to put down astrology, and astrology was taught before astronomy was ever even born. And right now, of course, they're still making mistakes, as you understand. They just took another planet away from you. So if you're into astrology now, you don't have Pluto anymore because they just told you it didn't exist. And just like they make it exist or not exist, so have they done most of history that they're used to again. But let me not digress. Let's go on again. Andrew Jackson was the hardest one I had in trying to research. I'd heard rumors through J.A. Rogers and other scholars that I went to school with. So I I got on the radio and almost got in trouble with that one, so it made me just study some more. I don't give up easily. I'm pretty tenacious once I get the scent. And I had the scent there. So what I found out was that Andrew Jackson was born on the Crawford Farm, which was in Virginia, and he was born 14 months after his father died. Oh, you laugh. I knew you're out there. What's wrong with that? I mean, it's just a gestation period, isn't it? 14 months after your father dies, you're born, right? There were no white men on the farm. And his oldest brother, Hamilton, was sold as a slave, which later on he had to free. Both had the same mother and supposedly the same father. But then I did even more research because they got on my case about it, and I found out that in Ireland he was part of the area where the black Celts live, the black Irish. Black Irish are just that. They're very dark-skinned. They live near the water area again, and they're called black Irish because of that. So I have to definitely include him now, and I don't back off of that. Another, of course, was Abraham Lincoln. And, of course, the famous thing of freeing a slave was Sailor Yeoman, and by God, filled the slaves. Well, he should have been because he was one. In fact, the swarthy texture of his skin, which simply means colored rather than texture, there were people who served him as servants who were lighter in complexion than Abraham Lincoln was. One of the reasons he was assassinated was because he was black, but that's not the only reason. He tried to set the United States back on the gold standard. Kennedy made the same mistake because of what they call the globalists in the Federal Reserve. You just don't do that, but that's another whole story. But he actually married Nancy, let me just get to the point because I spent a lot of time and did a lot of research on that. He married Nancy Hanks. And Nancy Hanks' father was a black man. Mother was a white woman. But Abraham Lincoln's father, who was Thomas Lincoln, had married Nancy Hanks. Therefore, automatically, he had to be part black or part African or swarthy complexion, whatever you would. Her mother was Lucy Hanks. Pictures of Lucy Hanks are everywhere. No doubt his mother and his grandmother were both black people, black women. The last one that I want to deal with is Dwight David Eisenhower. And Dwight David Eisenhower, who warned us about the militia takeover and told you about the industrial complex and better watch it again, he should very well know. Dwight David Eisenhower, when married a woman, his mother, he was Dwight David Eisenhower. David Eisenhower was his father. Dwight was him. Dwight had married what they called the Aleutian Brethren. These were a group of people who believed in interracial marriage because of religion, that all people should be one. And I have pictures of that. I didn't bring it. I don't like to travel with stuff nowadays. I get stopped almost everywhere I go. So that's one that will stay there. I would have brought a replicate, but I said no, I didn't. But that can be gotten, again, through our website, or if you want to contact the Meta Center itself. So you've named at least 6 right there, and I'll simply say I go into great detail on a tape. And as I told you before, I have 7 tapes that could encompass the black man's history on this planet. I know of no one with 7 tapes covering all that. The Nubian Egyptian empires. It deals with the black presidents. It deals with the 18th dynasty Egypt, which is one that everybody should remember because that was the last time when extraterrestrials and terrestrials mated and ruled a kingdom over in Egypt. That's what the Great Pyramids were based about, too. They've told you all wrong on the Great Pyramids until recently. This planet, I know of no one with 7 tapes covering all that. The Nubian Egyptian empires. It deals with the black presidents. It deals with the 18th dynasty Egypt, which is one that everybody should remember because that was the last time when extraterrestrials and terrestrials mated and ruled a kingdom over in Egypt. That's what the Great Pyramids were based about, too. They've told you all wrong on the Great Pyramids until recently because they told you it was a burial place, and there's not one pyramid over in the Giza Plateau that was ancient that was ever used as a burial ground. You've had some lesser kings that tried to emulate that, and it was buried there. It was not. It was generators. Those are Oregon energy generators, and that's why they're coming active again. If you've been over there recently, you'll find out there's a humming and a beat in the ground around there. The first thing you have to adapt to when you now go into modern Egypt is
the chakras, and these 7 chakras, they actually mirror in many ways the what we might say the hierarchy of human needs and the hierarchy of human expressions. So the first chakra is the energy center for survival and safety. The second chakra is for creativity and also for reproduction, sexual energy. The third chakra is for stability and being center awareness. It is also the chakra for desire and manifestation of desire and intention and will, and what will ultimately become your destiny. The fourth chakra, which is here in the heart, is for love, compassion, joy, harmony, peace, laughter. The fifth chakra, which is the throat chakra, is manifestation through action. The sixth chakra is about intuition, insight, imagination, integration of body, mind, and soul. And the seventh chakra is getting in touch with your higher self or enlightenment. So the first chakra is the base of the spine, the second chakra between the navel and the spine, the third chakra between the navel and the epigastrium, the fourth heart, fifth expression here, intuition, and enlightenment. These are metaphors for expression of consciousness as consciousness manifests in our physical body through energy. So chakras are not only centers of energy, they are the centers or junction points between consciousness or spirit and our biology. Opening the chakras is the full unfoldment of our own spirit, and that is what we teach in our courses.
We won't know until we die. We won't know the ultimate truth to all these questions until we die.
If you go through life waking, dreaming, and sleeping, you won't know. But if you evolve to these higher states of consciousness, then the unknown will become known to you. And that is called a death in samadhi or in full awakening. So you will know because the unknown will become known to you. Not only will you know, you can plan the trajectory of your journey through cosmic time. The soul is on a journey through cosmic time. And you can orchestrate, because you have awakened to the bigger reality, you can orchestrate your journey through cosmic time. Right now, you and I are having a meeting in cosmic time. It's a short meeting because, look at eternity. Okay, an entire lifetime is a blink. So this is a blink within a blink within a blink within a blink. But this is a meeting in cosmic time. And there's karma, which means you're here to learn something from me and I'm here to learn something from you, and we're here to expand our consciousness in that spiral. Okay, so the goal actually is to wake up in now. When Buddha was dying, the story we are told is same guy, Ananda, who saw the universe in a flower, which is very similar to William Blake, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand, see eternity in a flower, or something like that. So Ananda saw the same thing. So when he was dying, and Buddha died pretty consciously, as this is called Mahasamadhi, many people do that, they die in full awareness in meditation, and it's part of the great wisdom traditions. Only people, you get so used to people dying of cancer and heart disease in hospitals with tubes that you don't know there's actually a very elegant exit that you can have. So Buddha was dying, and Ananda said to him, "So are you God?" And Buddha kind of said, "No." He said, "Are you a prophet?" He said, "No." "Are you a messenger?" He said, "No." He was getting impatient, Ananda, because there wasn't much time. He was going to take his last breath. So he said, "Who are you?" And Buddha said, "I'm awake."
At such dimensions to them. But both of them have come to this whole topic of wisdom from very different perspectives. Dr. Chopra comes at this as a doctor, as a scientist, and a very eloquent seeker, and has sort of given us so much to think about, coming at it from a scientific basis and then moving into many more theories and thoughts. Sadhguru comes at it as a mystic, as somebody who has been, who has sort of seen some of the unknowable and has come to us with a whole bunch of knowledge from that angle. But essentially, the three broad perspectives, they say, and that's just to set a context, and then we can get into the questions, is number one, they say, look, you have to look at the world through a different prism. You have to change your whole prism through which you view your own life, is a broad theme. The second broad theme, if you like, and it ties all back into modern wisdom, the second broad theme is that if you were able to do that, you would have unimmeasurable benefits for the body, and Dr. Chopra has been the expert in talking about the body, and Sadhguru as well, for the mind, because how you experience life is who you are. And then that creates a ripple effect because it makes you better people, and then you could create a better planet. So that's theme number 2. And then theme number 3 is to do that, you have to do a whole lot of things. This is not something that just happens easily. You have to go through a lot of rigorous discipline, and you need a science and technology to get there, essentially. And that science and technology comes in the form of yoga, and different forms of yoga, different forms of inner engineering, and self-inquiry, self-knowledge, self-discipline, and so on, that Dr. Chopra talks about. So there's many, many techniques. So these are 3 broad themes. Has your own thinking changed over the last, I mean, you both have been talking about variations of this topic for a very long time. Could you just tell us, has that changed a lot? Can you both take that question?
First of all, thank you for that amazing invocation. You really created the atmosphere here. And it's a great honor to meet you again, Sadhguru, after all these years. I remember playing Frisbee with you in Puerto Rico. And of course, Dr. Jayaraman, one day I will be like you. Okay? So yeah, my thinking has changed in the sense that when I started moving out of mainstream so-called scientific thinking, I was trying to establish in my mind the connection between mind and body. And over the last 4 decades, I have realized, which has been obvious to great sages throughout the centuries, that there's no system of thought that can access truth or reality, whether it's a scientific system of thought or mathematical system of thought, or these days we talk about quantum physics. None of these systems of thought can give us the experience of reality, because reality is beyond thought. Reality is inconceivable to the mind. These systems of thought, even scientific systems of thought, create models of reality. Not reality, but models of reality. And we have faith in them because once we understand the model, we can create technology. So we can create jet planes and bombs and mechanized death and internet and all the wonderful things. So we think science gives us access to reality. But even science is an activity in something that is not mind, that is not matter. For lack of a better word, it's a field of awareness, what the great sages call Brahman. And the universe is a modified form of that. Your mind, your body, and the universe out there is all conceived, constructed, governed, and the becoming of a non-local, inconceivable, dimensionless reality which is not in space and time. Now, this is very difficult for the modern person to grasp, okay? But it's actually part of since we're talking about ancient wisdom traditions, if you read the Yoga Vaishishta, it says that which cannot be seen but without which there's no seeing. That which cannot be perceived but without which there's no perception. Cannot be imagined but without that which there is no imagination, creativity, insight, intuition, choice. Everything that we call reality comes from an inconceivable, dimensionless, non-local domain which is not in space-time. So, talks about it. Water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. It's ancient, it's unborn, it's not subject to death. Now that's inconceivable to the mind, but it's experiential when you settle into awareness, when you settle into being, when you settle into existence, what is called Satchitananda or Tattvamasi, and you saw the video where he expressed his experience. That's not an intellectual experience. That is a transcendent experience. I'll stop there.
Sadhguru, you come at it from knowing. Tell us. how your own thinking has changed, how your own knowledge has changed.
I mean, I cannot say much about thought because I don't have much thought. This may sound a little like an oxymoron for people, but the fact of the matter is, most of the time I don't have any thought in me. For me, the phenomena of life that's happening within me always overwhelms everything else. Thought occurs to me only when I want to physically do something, arrange something around me. Otherwise, days on end will pass for me without a single thought. So, maybe I never grew up. In a way, yes, because when it comes to… people ask me, what has been your sadhana? My only sadhana has been that right from my childhood, I never got identified with anything. Either the family, or the culture, or the religion, or the society, or various other things happening around you, including your parentage, your siblings. I was involved with them, but never identified with anything. If human intelligence does not tie itself down with identity, every human being will realize the nature of life. Human intelligence is capable of figuring this. When I say intelligence, as Deepak pointed out, it's beyond the thought process. Unfortunately, because of the type of education systems we have today, we are completely committed to one dimension of our intelligence, which we call as the intellect, which is just the thought process. Thought can only happen with the data that you have gathered through five senses, which is very limited, one thing. Another thing is, the nature of data that the senses gather are only useful for survival process. The very nature of how you see things, how you hear, smell and taste and touch life is only relevant for survival process. If you wanting to know the life itself, then these instruments of perception are no good. Even what is light and darkness is a debate between you and another creature which sees darkness as light, isn't it? If you sit with an owl and start an argument as to which is light and which is darkness, it's an endless argument, but who do you think is right? Hello? If you're saying both, you're either in the diplomatic corps or you have a successful marriage.
Some have both.
You learn to say both, but if you're saying both, you're either an owl and start an argument as to… So if you wanting to know the life itself, then these instruments of perception are no good. Even what is light and darkness is a debate between you and another creature which sees darkness as light, isn't it? If you sit with an owl and start an argument as to which is light and which is darkness, it's an endless argument, but who do you think is right? Hello? If you're saying both, you're either in the diplomatic corps or you have a successful marriage.
Some have both.
You learn to say both, but which is the truth? What I see is the truth or what the owl sees is the truth? That's not the point, it is just that nature has opened up our sense perception as it is necessary for our survival. Accordingly, it has opened up sense perceptions for different creatures as it is necessary for their survival. But if survival is all you're seeking, this is good enough, the five senses. But once you have come as a human being, somehow survival is not good enough. If your stomach is empty, there's only one issue about food. But once the stomach becomes full, you have 100 issues going on. So the nature of the human being is such, no matter what you do, you want to be something more than what you are right now. And if that something more happens, something more, it's an endless pursuit. So somewhere, a human being is seeking a limitless expansion, but trying to do it with physical means. The very nature of physicality is a defined boundary. If there is no defined boundary, there is no possibility of physical happening in the universe. But now, a human being is longing for the boundless, that too in installments and through physical means. Through the boundary, you're trying to become boundless. The desire is fantastic, the method is hopeless. Because the moment you identify yourself with something, your intellect's work is just to protect that identity. If you… whatever the identities of nation or family or gender or race, religion, whatever, the moment you identify yourself with something, your intellect will only function around that to protect that. So, it is a certain type of prejudice the moment you're identified. So, the only thing I did with my life is, I never identified myself with anything, and life just exploded within me in ways that thought seems so puny that I do not indulge in thought most of the time.
You know, what you're saying, for all of us here, in some way, shape or form, we all pride ourselves on thinking human beings. This is a tough pill to swallow.
Thinking is just recycling of the data that you already gathered.
So, what is the leap of faith that you go from this perspective of thinking and thoughts to we don't belong to anyone, you know, we are not identified with any instrument, with any sort of localness. And I know both of you have spoken about that.
The thing is, this is not something that people will not get. They will get this. This is not some great teaching I'm telling you. If you get it right now in your life will transform in ways that you can't imagine possible. Otherwise, someday you will get it from the maggots. You will understand you don't belong to anything. So, the entire culture of what you're calling as Bharat is about Vairagya. The word Vairagya means… Rag means color, Vairag means beyond color. But if you say colorless in English language, it is a very negative connotation of being colorless. Let's put it as transparent. Because it's transparent, it can take on the color of anything right now. Right now, if my background is red, I'm red. If it's yellow, I'm yellow. I'm picking the colors from you, okay?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Well, blue and gold aren't bad either. Dr.
Well,
do you have something to add to that?
Just to elaborate on what he said. You're listening to us here. Now, just for a moment, turn your attention to who or what is listening. What he experiences being, right? Another word for awareness or existence. It's not a thought. Thought is what creates the subject-object split. Being is all there is, and being is not a thought. Okay, so as even now, if I asked you, are you aware? That's being. Now everything else is just a modulation of that. It's a feeling or a thought or a sensation or a perception. We call that the mind, we call that the body, we call that the universe. But all there is being and its modulations. Because what you experience is sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, and then you say, oh, that's a tree, that's a body, that's a universe, that's a rock. There are just different combinations of being and its modulations.
Did you all understand that? Thoda sa, some. It's a very… and I think this is part of the complexity I think we all struggle with.
Because you try to explain it in words. But again, as you're listening, turn to who is listening.
And I think, Dr. Chopra, the interesting question is, and Sadhguru, this is for you as well. Essentially, what we are doing in this whole process of asking all of us to change the prism is you're essentially asking us to experience it in some way.
Yeah, he said the mistake of the intellect. It's the mistake of the intellect
yes.
that there is separation between observer and observed. Because the observer and observed as mind and body are a single holistic activity of the total universe.
And if you go back, I think in the earlier session, there was quotes from the Gita, and I know you all, and you've spoken about that as a Sadhguru, about, and so the
I
whole,
have
not now, but
Not
basically, but I'm sorry, then it was, Dr. Chopra, you had spoken about the different forms of the different forms of yoga that have been, the Raja Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, and we know that it's been spoken about in the Gita. So what's so difficult? What is the barrier that people haven't seen it yet? It seems, in a way, it's an experience. It seems, it seems obvious at one level, and it's yet very difficult to grasp on the other. Could you just talk to us about what the barriers are?
For some of us who were brought up, educated in a scientific worldview or in a worldview that emphasizes recycled information, as he said, or all of that, it's very difficult to intellectually get to being because we identify, as he said, with our perceptual experience, with our intellect, with our mind, with our ego identity. So it always seems a struggle till one day you stop struggling and you're there. And as he said, he never identified with anything. Once you identify with a thought or with a perception or with what you think is a knowing or a sensation or an emotion, then you're in time. Thought is in time, but being is not in time.
Sadhguru, your thoughts?
I mean, I'm completely spiritually uneducated. I don't know from where I have quoted. I have not quoted generally, except the grandmother Gita that's around us. I have to admit that I have neither read the Gita, nor the Vedas, nor the Upanishads, nor even the Yoga Sutra. I've never studied anything. The most profound literature that I read, I read English literature just for fun because I like the language. Otherwise, the most profound stuff that I read is asterisks.
Is what?
Asterisk. Asterisk comics, yeah.
Because why I'm saying this is, this is what it is. For example, a modern scientist is trying to mathematically deduce the reality. Everything has to fit in to his math, and he will deduct everything and say the entire universe is one. But it's not in his experience. A religious person will say, God is everywhere, so everything is one. But it's not yet in his experience. He believes. One is making deductions, another is believing. A yogi is a hard nut who doesn't believe anything, who doesn't want to deduce anything. Unless it becomes real within him, it's not real for him. So, because of this approach, I never found the need to read anything spiritual. If I read something, it may be a news magazine or literature or something else, but never anything spiritual, because I never wanted to clutter my own clarity with anything outside. And the only thing I know is, I know this piece of life from its origin to its ultimate, and that's all. Because you know this piece of life, by inference, you seem to know everything else. Today there is a certain theory coming out which is called as the constructional theory. What they're trying to say is, whether you take an amoeba or a human being, whether you take the atomic or the cosmic, the fundamental design is same. It is just the sophistication and the complexity is multiplying. So if the fundamental design is same, if you want to know the entire universe, you just have to know this. And this is the only thing that's available to you, accessible to you. When I say this is the only thing available and accessible to you, see, right now you believe that you can see me sitting here, but that's not the fact of the matter. The fact is, light is falling upon me, reflecting, going through your lenses, inverted image in the retina, you know the entire story. So if you see me only within you. If you hear me only within you. Whatever ever happened to you, light and darkness happens within you, pain and pleasure happens within you, joy and misery happens within you, agony and ecstasy happens within you. Right now if I touch your hand, you think you're experiencing my hand. No, you're only experiencing the sensations in your hand. Or in other words, the entire human experience is happening within you. The very seat of your experience is within you. What is happening within you, at least you must be able to determine. What is happening within you must happen the way you want it. If what happens within you happens the way you want it, suddenly your ability to create what you want to happen in the world also is tremendously enhanced. Not because you know the world, because you know this. This is why realization was held as the biggest thing. You must understand it's realization, it's not an achievement. It is not an attainment, it's a realization. Realization means it's always there. I was stupid enough not to see it, suddenly one day I saw it. That's what realization means. Never we said any inner things or accomplishments or achievements, they are not any kind of peak climbing. It's just a realization, it's always been there. It was always been there to see. So everybody is quoting Gita, let me also quote. At some point it seems Arjuna asked, I don't know, it's been whether made up by somebody, it's really in Gita, please correct me if it is so. It seems Arjuna asked that, where is this truth that you're talking about? This intangible, unperceivable truth, where is it? It seems Krishna laughed and said, it's at the tip of your nose. Now there are many schools of yoga which are intensely focusing on the tips of their noses and getting headache. Try and see what he is trying to say is, it is the most obvious thing. The most obvious thing, if you pay attention to your existence, not to your thought, not to your emotion, not to the arrangements of life that you've made around you, if you pay attention to the nature of your existence, it is the most obvious thing. It's at the tip of your nose is a metaphor in India that it is the most obvious thing. But by focusing on the tip of the nose, enlightenment will not happen, headache is guaranteed.
So picking up on Sadhguru's point, Dr. Chopra, so what is scientific inquiry in this… with this construct, which is, hey, it's realization, it is a knowing, and what…
You know, Sadhguru is one of the few lucky ones. I've known two other people who said what he said, that, and thank God I never read anything. One was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He used to always say, thank God I never read anything because it would have cluttered my mind. And the other was Krishnamurti. He would say the same thing, that, you know, the more you read, the more you clutter your mind. And he also would say, I've never read anything. So that's unusual. He happens to have fallen into existence because he fell into existence, okay, or awareness, or whatever you want to call it, being. I was not, I struggled, okay. I read all the scientific literature, medical literature, psychology, Jungian psychology. I read the Bhagavad Gita, every single translation. I read Rig Veda, I read Yoga Vasishtha, I read Kashmir Shaivism, Vedanta, all of that. No, you shouldn't, your mind will get cluttered.
So at this stage in my life, I also want to know what they said in the past.
Yeah, well, they said what you're saying. I mean, they said exactly what you're saying. But for me, as a person who had been trained to look at things scientifically, it was both a struggle and a need, because reality is not a map, and yet science gives us maps. The Yoga Vishishta gives us a map. Patanjali gives us a map. The Bhagavad Gita gives us a map. Some of us need maps. Okay, if I'm going from here to Boston and you give me a map, a road map or a contour map or a sea map or an air map, and I take the road map and I get to Rhode Island and it works.
Now I get this. I think the reason why I didn't read the maps is I met someone who was a GPS.
That's good. But GPS is also a map, right?
Sadhguru,
once
I
you
thought you said GPS is the guru positioning system.
Yeah.
It's your term.
So once you use a map and it works for… the map seems valid from here to Rhode Island.
Guru positioning.
GPS is also a map. It's good.
The GPS. I think the reason…
map and I get to Rhode Island and it works.
Now I get this. I think the reason why I didn't read the maps is I met someone who was a GPS.
But GPS is also a map, right?
Sadhguru, I thought you said GPS is the guru positioning system.
Yeah.
It's your term.
So once you use a map and it works for… the map seems valid from here to Rhode Island, then I assume, poor me, who's not had this experience of falling into the place of no thought, then I say, if the map is working up to here, maybe it works from here to there as well. So it's a kind of a psychological validation. And I'll just stop in a moment, but for the last 10 years at our center, when we teach people to sit in reflection, contemplative self-inquiry, or transcendence, or take them through what we call the wheel of awareness, vipassana, or body awareness, or awareness inside the body, or awareness of mental space. We've been doing it now for 25 years. But last 5–10 years, we've been able to look at the brain, we've been able to look at gene expression, we've been able to look at cell markers of aging, telomerase, telomere length. We've been able to look at what are called inflammatory markers. In other words, everything that's happening in the body at a biological cell level. 23,000 genes, 3.3 million bacterial genes. Actually, your body is more bacteria than it is human cells, the microbiome. So we're looking at those genes. And then we're looking at what is called the epigenome, which is the shell of proteins outside the genome, and how these work together. And what we are finding is remarkable. In the beginning, nobody would believe us, but now we have collaborations with Harvard, UCSF, UCSD, Scripps, with digital technology, with Duke University, with Mount Sinai. We can look at a blood sample, and we can tell you, just by looking at the blood sample and the gene expression, if you're experiencing samadhi occasionally or not, if your mind is quiet or not, if you're falling into the place where he
Even whether our parents experience this.
Parents too. In fact, the epigenetic shows that your experiences now, which are not in your brain, by the way. Everybody says, my experience is in my brain. It's not in your brain. Your experiences are not in your body. Your experiences are in a non-local consciousness, which is not in space-time. But whatever, that's a whole different discussion. But we can now, in fact, our collaborator, and this is a joke actually, but it tell you how it is. One of our collaborators, who's Eric Schott here at Mount Sinai, he does genomic expression, he does RNA transcription, he looks at what is called the transcriptome. He showed a slide. He says this is a genetic signature of people who are experiencing samadhi. And these are people that he had studied at our center. So somebody asked him in the audience, they said, Dr. Schott, do you meditate? He said, no. He says, are you going to learn? He said, no. He said, but you just showed us the signature, the genetic signature of somebody who does. He says, yeah, but I'll figure out how to make a drug out of this. So
So what Deepak is saying is, if your children are brats, it's you.
Yes, it is you. It is you. 7 generations. You know, in Hawaii they have these temples and cow farms. If a cow has been zapped electrically, the next generation of cows will not go to the fence. They already know it's electrical and they might get shocked. Okay? Then the following generation. Now, people have done experiments right here where you take mice and you have them smell wintergreen, which is a very pleasant smell. Then they get mild electrical shocks. The next 7 generations of mice will be scared by smelling wintergreen. So this is the first window that's opening into what we call sanskaras or vasanas. You know, you have 2 identical twins and they have the same genome. In fact, exactly the same genome. But they're not the same people, right? They have different, mother will tell you that they have different personalities. Where is the seat of this personality? Where is it coming from? This is why science opens the window to what people already knew, actually, in our tradition.
And it's interesting that even if science opens the window, and I think both of you have said it in different ways, that it's just a very small, you know, it's still like, boiling the ocean in a kerosene stove, because science can only go so far because there's so many forms of knowing and so many forms of seeing, as you have said. So it's a challenge, I imagine.
Even science is a series of realizations, okay? I mean, science is not outside of this. Science has evolved because of series of realizations, but happening in small spurts, not grasping the entirety of it, but in bits and pieces, realization and realization and realization, this is what it is. We say he discovered something, but what it is he observed something. He realized that this is the way it works, some aspect of it. And knowing the physical dimension of how it functions allows you to do many things with the physical world, which you see in the form of technology today.
Very important thing though, but science has now brought us to what we call the portal or the door, the sub-empirical. And the sub-empirical is less than 0.01% of the unmanifest, which is scientifically unknowable, not unknown, unknowable, because how do you measure something that is totally unmanifest? It's not in space-time. Okay, so once you get beyond, I think if I can elaborate on this for just 1 minute, the 2 most open questions in science today, there are 150 open questions, but the 2 most open questions, number 1 is, what is the universe made of? And the answer is we don't know, because 96% of the universe is invisible, what they call dark energy, dark matter, but it's not, those are words. They don't know exactly what it is. One is expanding the universe, one is contracting the universe. Dark energy, 96%, that leaves 4% of the universe, which is atomic. Of that 4%, 99.99% is invisible interstellar dust, which hasn't become stars and galaxies. So the visible universe, which is all the galaxies, the billions of stars, the trillions of planets, is 0.01%. Now that 0.01%, which is made of atoms, is made of particles, but particles, when you're not looking at particles or when they're not interacting with other particles, they disappear, they become waves. So what's the universe made of? Nothing. And this is a scientific fact. The second open question is, where does consciousness come from? And scientists are struggling because they think consciousness is a production of the brain. Just like, bile is a production of your gallbladder, or acid is a production of your stomach, pancreatic juice is made by your pancreas. Oh, so consciousness is made by the brain. So they keep struggling. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. Sadhguru mentioned photons. Okay, this is the hard problem. This, I'll just stop in 1 second. But right now you're looking at this. This is blue, this is red. You're seeing this beautiful shirt. What's coming to your eyes are colorless photons. What's going to your brain is an electrical current. What's happening in your brain is chemistry. You're not experiencing chemistry or electrical currents. You're experiencing a three-dimensional reality in space-time. No one knows how that happens, so they keep struggling and struggling. If I ask you to imagine a beautiful sunset on the ocean, do it right now. You see a picture. There's no picture in your brain. So, the fact that the brain produces consciousness is just an idea. Nobody has ever proved that. Consciousness is not in the brain. The brain is in consciousness. The body is in consciousness. The mind is in consciousness. The whole universe is in consciousness. And you cannot get at it through a system of thought.
For this, to further, make it into an experiential process, what Deepak said just now. You obviously cannot access it with thought process because thought is an accumulated information which you're recycling according to your convenience. Right now, our ideas of who we are, or what I am and what I am not, is determined by this. If you just do this simple experiment right now, take your right hand and touch your left hand, please, all of you. Can you do this? Is that you? Is that you? Yes. Just touch the chair on which you're sitting. Is that you? Oh, who's this?
But it is.
You own the…
It is.
Now, in your experience, this is me and this is not me. The basis of this experience is coming from this. Where there is a sensation, you think it's me. Where there is no sensation, you think it's not me. Right now, the water in the glass is not you, but if you consume it, it becomes you. And these whatever number of kilograms you carry right now, all this was all over the planet, and today it's me. The air that you breathe, what is not you is becoming you. The food on your table, what is not you is becoming you right now. This moment, what is not you, in a couple of hours it becomes you. So, your experience of myself is basically the boundaries of your sensation. The nature of the boundaries of sensation are such, if you allow your life energies to be in a certain level of exuberance, you will see the boundaries of your sensation will expand. You can just know this just by rubbing your hands and holding it like this, you will see something begins to happen between your hands. There are sensations transmitting between the two hands. Or if you've been very joyful or ecstatic at a certain moment, you will see sensations seem to be all over the place. If you create a certain system within you where your life energies are kept in a certain level of exuberance, then the sensory body will expand. If the sensory body, let us say, became as big as this hall, then you will experience everything in this hall and everybody in this hall as a part of yourself, like you experience the 5 fingers of your hand as yourself right now. So what is referred to as yoga is, the word yoga means union. That means you experience the entire universe as yourself. This is happening because you are in such a state of… you have found a mechanism by working with the body, by working with the mind, by working with the emotion and energy, you have set up a step-by-step system within yourself where your energies are kept at such a level of exuberance that your sensory body is as large as the universe. So if you sit here, you experience the entire universe as myself. Once you experience everybody around you as yourself, then I don't have to tell you, don't kill this person, don't drop that person, don't harm this… all morality will be useless for you because you have experienced everything as myself. You don't have to try to be good. Your goodness is a consequence. Your goodness is not an effort.
What he says, he's saying it experientially, okay? But the fact is, if you ask scientists, are there any boundaries in the universe, they'll tell you there isn't. Every boundary is notional or perceptual, and we don't know how perception occurs anyway. So boundaries are conceptual ideas. There are no boundaries in the universe, and there are no boundaries to your skin. In fact, what he said is your body is the entire ecosystem. It's not only the entire ecosystem of the planet, the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen came from galaxies. So the carbon in your fingernails and the hydrogen in your eyes or the oxygen in your blood could have come from different galaxies. You are the total universe at this moment, a pattern of behavior in space-time. And before I say Jack Robinson, you're a different activity anyway. There is no permanent activity as a noun. You are not a noun, you're a verb. And the verb is the activity of the total universe. I, the most frequent word we use is I. So I say, where are you? You say, I'm here. Okay. And so then I can ask you, okay, you're here, but where am I? You say, you're there. You say, where is the I in you experiencing seeing me? I do this with neuroscientists, and they'll say, in my eyes. I say, your eyes are this big, they're 9 centimeters apart, the retina is curved. By the time light gets into your retina, it's inverted, you should be seeing two of me about this size, upside down, 9 centimeters apart. You're not having that experience. Then they point to the brain and say, how do I fit inside your brain? How does this room fit inside your brain? How does the whole world fit inside your brain? There's no answer for this in science, by the way. Rumi, there's a beautiful poem. Look at your eyes. They're so small. They see enormous things. So where is the I that is experiencing this conversation right now? Where is it? It's the wrong question. It has no location in space or time. That is who I is. And the whole universe is in I.
So just let's wrap up this segment of the discussion. If you had $10 billion to spend on scientific exploration or giving experiences to people to get their own path of realization, where would you spend it, both of you?
Well,
I want individual answers. 10, 12 words or less.
The answer is obvious, experience, but I would have a problem with that because I work with scientists. I'm going from here to a conference on science. I need to be able to talk to my peers. Okay, so while the answer is experience, and experience doesn't cost $10 billion, I would probably go science just because I'm still struggling with my scientific peers.
Sadhguru?
The experience has not become widespread because there is no infrastructure. Neither physical infrastructure nor human infrastructure. For example, in this country 150 years ago, they tell me over 94% of the people were illiterate. Today, 100% literacy. How does it happen? Because somebody built the schoolroom, somebody trained the teachers. That infrastructure for inner experience has been wiped out in the last few centuries. So how do you expect it to happen? One guy talking here, one guy talking there is not going to make it happen. What should be a part of our life from the day we start? Because the nature of human intelligence is such that if you don't mess it up with belief systems, every human being will find it. Too many concepts, too many ideas, too many belief systems. Human intelligence is corrupt from the beginning. If you do not corrupt human intelligence, just leave it. Every human being is capable of knowing this. It is not some superhuman thing. The most important thing to remember is this yoga, this spiritual process is not about becoming superhuman. It is about knowing that being human itself is super.
What's your definition of success?
Success is the ability to love and have compassion. Success is, to some people, the progressive realization of worthy goals. Success ultimately is knowing who you are.
Sadhguru?
If you can be blissed out, no matter what's happening around you, if you can be involved and still not be affected by what's happening around you, not by removing yourself, you're absolutely involved but untouched by the process of life, I think that's success.
Second question, where we'll go a little bit into the world space. What advice would you give Angela Merkel today? Compassion or sovereignty?
It's obvious, compassion. There's no such thing as sovereignty. I think all nationalism is a sophisticated form of tribalism. I think your essential being has no religion, no race, no gender, no assumed identity. It's pure consciousness. So obviously I would say compassion.
Let them all in, the migrancy will.
Being a very
Sean. I was thinking about something, Pops. I got this. I was listening to this dude, like, kind of thinking, no matter, we're gonna give us this limitation, right? Just say, use the I, the ego, and consciousness, right? But like, what if like the truth is that everything's conscious, right? Like water has a consciousness, right? And it's like when you deprive yourself of water, right? You're conscious of that. You become thirsty. You become dehydrated, and it affects your mind, which affects your body, your soul, right? Your intentions, right? And and when you drink that water is a conscious entity. It's going to affect your consciousness. You take that and put it into this meditation. Does that make sense? It's like the fire is conscious. And you touch it. between us, the boundaries of the body. It gives us the idea that our consciousness is different. Still dividing yourself. You're still dividing yourself into into who your perspective is. You know, um, yeah, there isn't like like what you gotta see is that man, acting with one another, all like all bouncing off one another one way or another. Experience goes deeper than like the, the small experience. Generations back. It goes 5 generations back. You have a bloodline in your DNA. But I'm saying, stop saying I. Like you can't stop saying I. You can't stop saying I, but it's like because you brainwashed. Because you brainwashed. You can't even stop saying I, and it's like I'm speaking of it in a like like there is no I. The I is a blink. This moment is a blink, and it's all a blink and a blink and a blink, and it's gonna be over. You're gonna die. Oh, the the I. Is the individual is an illusion. The the individual doesn't have to do anything. Individual doesn't have right. You just are. It just is. It just being. You don't have to eat. You just eat. You don't have to eat. You just eat. I don't have to eat. You don't. You don't have to do any of those things. But like but you just do. It's like you don't have to blink. You just do. Like, you just do. You don't have to. No, you just do. That's not why we eat. Tell me, that's not why we eat. That's not why we eat.